Welcome, everybody, to our webinar, SimpleVoIP. It's gone. August 2nd, 2022 deadline for POTS and copper phone lines. I'm with Josh Robbins, the CEO and co-founder. Had the great pleasure of working with Josh recently at the Robust IT Expo show in Fort Lauderdale. That was about a month ago. Josh, how you doing today?
Doing great. Enjoyed seeing you last month in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you next year as well. Well, Josh, why don't we just jump right into it and let's get going.
Sounds great. What is the format for muting and unmuting if people have questions? What would you like to keep it to the end or let them interrupt?
No, go ahead and interrupt. And we typically, let's see, they have Ginny, they can raise their hand. I believe they can. Folks, we'll do this. Raise your hand and also put in chat that you'd like to speak, and I'll see what I can do.
Okay, that works great. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'll just get started.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, great. Thanks everybody for joining today. Looking forward to talking here. Again, interrupt at any time. This can be turned into a discussion. So a little bit about myself before we get into the deadline that's rapidly approaching, I believe next week, August 2nd. So today we're going to talk about what's going on with all that copper and where it's going and what we can do about it and what we're seeing our customers do about it. So quick history about, oh, I know Victor coming in. Quick history on us. So I started a business back in 2003 called Gecko Tech. We were a small regional player that actually turned into a national service provider selling to small mid-sized businesses. We did what we called hosted VoIP back then. Now we call it UCaaS. There's been a number of different names, but we started the business really as customers who needed us to provide phone and internet service in a large building that had about 2,000 people in it, cut up into 20 different companies. We ended up sharing a big PBX, big picture of the old Avaya PBX there. We ended up partitioning that thing and really making something out of it that it wasn't really meant for, but it opened up a revenue opportunity and a business opportunity that then we took out and said, okay, well, now that we've filled up this building, what can we do outside this building in the rest of Chicago and then the rest of the United States? And that's when we went and made an investment in a soft switch, which was then company called Vocal Data. Now, after 3 or 4 acquisitions, it became Broadsoft, who some of you may have heard of. And we built a business around really what is commonplace now, but what in early 2000s was very, very different and new. And we were providing VoIP service using Cisco phones with the brains of that phone system in a hardened data center and a couple hardened data centers across the U.S. And it was the business grew. We did very well with small and mid-sized businesses across the country. And we eventually sold that business in 2010 to a company called M5 Networks in New York. And then a year later sold the combined company to ShoreTel in California, which is now Mitel, until it's something else Tel. So yes.
Yeah, Josh, with this audience from the SMB Nation crowd, they're going to remember M5. We did some things with them probably in the 2000s. And then we also did some things with Mitel with Microsoft Response Point.
Okay.
So I'm just connecting the dots. Please continue.
Yeah, very cool. So we had a lot of fun in that. And really the business was growing. And we spent a lot of time educating people as to, well, why are we going to put our phones on the internet? It doesn't make any sense. How's it going to work? Of course, we required T1 lines for all of our customers, if you remember that, in order to because the internet, the broadband internet wasn't really there in 2004, 2005. So lots changed. All the copper that was used back in that business is now what we're talking about today. So a lot of you probably who are on here now have heard already or talked with other people, or maybe your customers are feeling some of the pain of this POTS sunset. And really, it's a copper sunset. So what happened is 3 years ago, the FCC made a ruling that says we've got a 3-year kind of ramp down period, where a transition period. So in 3 years after, and that 3 years expires next week on August 2nd, 2022. We've been talking about it for 3 years, and nobody's really done much until the last kind of 3 to 6 months. And now people are kind of treating it like the Y2K crisis. We know that something's coming. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but things are happening. So I'm going to talk about kind of what we know and what we're seeing, and what I'm seeing with our customers. But the gist of it is that 3-year transition plan after August 2nd, 2022. The major telecom providers, so Verizon, CenturyLink, AT&T, these guys are now no longer required, or will be no longer required, to sell services on copper or maintain that existing copper. And now they can transition their customers and their customers' customers to alternative technologies. So the alternative technology for internet services that were based on copper, the expectation is everything's moving to fiber, as it has been the last 10 years or so. Not super practical if you've got a DSL line out in some small town somewhere that's only served by one farm telco. Not practical for them to say, well, now you got to use fiber because there's no fiber, right? And trenching costs a lot of money. So we have a lot of people scrambling right now. Old ADSL, we've got PRI phone lines, we've got even some frame relay, and then POTS lines. So all these copper services are now kind of in the air, and they're disappearing, and everybody's kind of treating them a little differently. So some of the uses for today, we're just going to really talk about the POTS lines, so phone service and data service running over copper pairs. So services we all know about. You've got a PBX in an office. It's got 2 or 3 or 5 phone lines connected to it. Those are the POTS lines. Analog phones, maybe you've got a retail location that just has 2 phone lines, and you've got a 2-line handset that you're using with a bunch of cordless phones. Then we've got some kind of what we'll call the Lifeline services, getting into POTS lines that are much more critical. So an elevator phone or a pool phone. Now we're talking about phones that they really need to work. Now, they're not used very often, but when they are, it's because there's an emergency. Somebody's choking or drowning. We're stuck in an elevator. On the data side for copper, we've got traditional modems. I mean, I don't know, people might be still dialing up to AOL. There's fax machines. There's credit card terminals that have a modem built into them that have to talk to a central terminal. Alarm systems, that's a big one. Fire panels, these are very, very important. And a lot of these systems were put in place 25 years ago and set it and forget it. And they're working great, but now will they work once those phone lines get either disconnected or when they have a time frame where they're going to get disconnected? Safes, so Brinks safes that will go in a retail or a restaurant. Those guys usually have a phone line plugged into it for monitoring and reporting, kind of like an alarm system. Yeah, and so I think that's everything on here. There's obviously a lot of other uses for these phone lines, but these are kind of all the things when we talk to customers. Hey, what are you using in your office? Do you have old phone lines? Do you have fax machines? Do you have modems? And this opens up conversations.
Well, and Josh is you and I talked last month, and we talked the other day. Literally, there's an old-fashioned tire store down the street here from my pad in the Texas Hill Country, Wagner Tires, and it's all that, right? It's old school, and that's what they have for their fax machine and their phone or POTS lines. Seriously.
Yeah, and listen, I don't know why anybody has a fax machine. We've had eFax for 15, 20 years, but I have thousands of customers with fax machines still, and they can't get rid of them. They use them for, I don't know if they're sending them in maybe payroll companies. A lot of banks still like to use fax machines.
Healthcare,
like for HIPAA compliancy, which I mean, kind of makes sense. But then you got a fax a piece of paper sitting on a machine. So, but yeah, a lot of these industries still use faxes, and as much as the IT department tries to get them to go to eFax or scan an email, there's resistance in operations and the actual people using them. So we have to provide service for them. So let's see. So here's what our customers are telling us. And, I mentioned the Y2K thing. I'm sure everybody here went through that. We all thought the ATM machines were going to explode and our cars were going to stop and elevator doors were going to open and close and it's going to be crazy. A lot of work got done then and it employed a lot of people to fix a lot of the crucial things, but it wasn't really the end of the world. So, phone lines are not going to shut off next Tuesday. What we're seeing, what our customers are telling us, is number one, in the last 6 months, we've seen bill notices of a 30-day notice of an increase, and average POTS line with taxes and everything tends to be around $60 a month. I saw an AT&T bill notice on one of our customers that had I think about 200 locations, where they said starting next month these lines are now $433 a month. So kind of a big jump. Last 2 weeks ago, I don't remember if it was Verizon or CenturyLink or who it was, but I saw a similar bill notice that went to $1,000 for a single phone line.
Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding. So, not just using scare tactics, which of course we're talking to our customers about this, but we're really seeing it. It's happening, and it makes sense, right? They're going to squeeze the carriers. They're going to squeeze customers, and they're going to grab all the revenue they can before the copper deteriorates. But they don't have to maintain it anymore. So now we're dealing with the line goes down, and are they going to roll a truck? Are you going to be first in line? Or are you going to be last in line to get that fixed? I don't know the answer to that question, but you're going to be probably towards the end, and you're going to be paying way more than any of their other technologies that are out there. So we're also seeing notices of disconnection. There's, I think technically they're supposed to, per the FCC, they're supposed to give 90 days notice that we're no longer offering this product line, whether it's ADSL or a POTS line. And we're seeing 30-day notices or less for price increases. So this is the biggest one. I mean, I think the money tends to squeeze people out and say, okay, now we should probably do something about it because this is going to get way too expensive.
And by the way, Josh, let me interrupt you. So folks, feel free to raise your hand with the reactions. And in fact, I can turn on your microphone. And there's a couple people that I hope we hear from. So Alan Miller from the old Response Point days, Joe Moore, SBS and Response Point. There's Victor out of Louisiana. So folks, don't be shy. All right, please continue, Josh.
Yep. So just want to throw a little thing out here on the financial concerns that I talked about a minute ago. So we have a customer, and I'll do a case study in a little bit, but they have about 5 POTS lines per location, 100 stores. They're paying $60. They were paying $60 a month on average per line. So you call it $300 a store. And these POTS lines are used for one's for an alarm, 2 are for fire panel, 1 is for a safe, and then the 5th one is kind of a backup. It's their carryout. It's a restaurant, so it's a carryout phone line. Also a backup for in case their VoIP service, also provided by us, is down. Because their power is out or their internet and their backup internet is out. So having that extra number there makes them feel better. So
that's actually a valid point. I forgot that till you mentioned it, that the POTS lines will work if the power's out. And back in the day, I lived on Bainbridge Island across from Seattle. We had a POTS line.
Yep.
And the power goes out on these small islands. The power goes out and the phone still worked.
Yeah. So our business is primarily retail and restaurant chains. And so these locations, and we have power outages every single day across the country. We get into hurricane season and, the Southeast gets pummeled and there's constant power outages. There's constant fiber cuts and internet outages. So customers will have an primary internet, and they'll have hopefully a backup 4G or 5G using a cradle point. But nothing compares to the old POTS line. It's a pair of copper wires. It's two copper wires that get their power from somewhere underneath the ground, and they just work until they don't, until they're no longer offered as a service. So we're going to get into kind of what the options are in the next couple slides. But from a financial perspective, this particular customer with 100 stores, they just got a bill notice that they're going from $60 to $500 on average per line. It's $440 increase, and that's adding an additional, almost $250,000 a month in spend just for phone lines. So they're scrambling, lots to do. This is obviously a number that as a restaurant, their margins are so thin that they really don't want to absorb that. So yeah, are they really going to shut us down next week? I think we addressed this a little earlier. I don't think it's likely. Some carriers are sending shutdown notices, but giving you a couple months to do something. Prices are dramatically increasing. Lifeline services are the biggest problem here. A lot of folks know how to solve the phone line problem. There's cellular phones, there's VoIP, there's whatever your cable provider is, which also is a VoIP service. But these Lifeline services, alarms, elevators, pools, fire, safes, these things have been most VoIP providers have said, nope, don't want to touch it. Too risky. I don't want the liability. The services, it either works or it doesn't. And really, we don't want to put those services on a cheap internet product that might be down, or also have to deal with power issues. So that's been tough. So I guess the question is, do you want to take your chances and wait it out and see if they raise prices, or when? I don't think it's an if, I think it's a when. And also these lines are going away. So let's talk about the options. I've highlighted 3 options today that I want to talk through. And this is really as it relates to what's connected to those POTS lines that may be at your customer location, whether it's an office or a retail store. So number one is you've got equipment, and most of the equipment out there could be retrofitted to not use a POTS line anymore. So every alarm system security company out there that does alarm and fire, you can call them up and say, hey, I want a cellular or an IP option. They'll all give that option, and sometimes it involves rolling a truck and putting in a little card, a cellular card, into the existing security panel. And sometimes they say, well, this panel's so old it doesn't even support an upgraded card for cellular or internet, so we're gonna have to replace the panel. So that's an option. The costs associated with that, same thing with a safe. Maybe the safe takes a phone line but doesn't have an upgrade capability because it's 20 years old. So the options there are, you might have to either retrofit that equipment and roll a truck to install it and test it, or completely replace that equipment. And the replacement would cost a good amount of money. At that point, you're now running monitoring over cellular, and from a alarm perspective, it is actually, cellular is a great way to go if you have a good signal, because it's not, we don't have power issues, we don't have any cabling issues. We do have power, but most alarm systems have a battery backup, but there's no cables that can be cut, and it doesn't rely on your internet. But it is expensive to retrofit. And in the environment like that I mentioned earlier, where we've got a restaurant that has these 4 or 5 different devices, we're talking about a bigger company that has different departments handling these things. So if you want to, it's not like the IT group can just go and easily retrofit all of this gear. They're going to have to include the security group. They're going to have to include the cache management group for the safe, and then the telco, whoever's dealing with the phones for that backup line. So fairly difficult, involved project to replace or retrofit. Number 2, you can migrate everything to a cloud-based VoIP provider, such as us or anybody else out there. And we'll go through what that involves, but taking your old phone lines off of POTS and moving them to voice over IP is what people have been doing for the past 10, 15 years, and this has just accelerated that. There are some considerations for, of course, the Lifeline services like the alarms, and I'll talk through that. And that's this third one, which is deploying a POTS replacement solution. So the POTS replacement solution is kind of a hybrid. There is VoIP in it, but it is a specialized VoIP product that was built really to support these data-driven applications. So modems, fax machines, alarm systems, fire panels, elevators, things like that. Things that are data-driven or that are voice applications that require more of a POTS replacement. Like I need this to work all the time. So I'll go through the POTS replacement solution. It's the closest thing to a pair of copper you can get. from a reliability standpoint, and checks the boxes from a compliance standpoint as well. So let's go through these options. The retrofit, we spent a little time on this, but so here's some pictures. Here is a safe. This looks like an alarm panel. Again, involves multiple vendor visits. We might have 3 different vendors visiting at 3 different times to the location. You're either going to have to replace or completely a panel or add a new card, and you got to spend money on this, and you may have to have budget in multiple parts of the organization. If you only have one alarm system and you don't have all the others, then maybe it makes sense. The more complex it is, there might be a better option. A lot of our customers are doing this, and then we see, being in the retail and restaurant space, we see a lot of alarm systems that have been or are currently migrating to a cellular-based monitoring solution. And I should mention, when you do this retrofit, it usually costs about $8 a month for a cellular alarm monitor. That's significantly less than $60 for a POTS line, significantly less than $25 to $40 for a VoIP line or a POTS replacement line. So the ROI is there. If you only have one alarm panel, most of our customers are actually just upgrading those to cellular and keeping their existing provider. The second option, and this is really for the voice, call it voice and fax applications, not necessarily the Lifeline side, but cloud VoIP. So what used to be called hosted VoIP now is called UCaaS. Call it cloud VoIP, whatever you like. That's the service we offer. It's a service RingCentral and 8x8 and Vonage and all these big boys offer, but that's basically let's get rid of your phone lines and let's deploy IP handsets. And the brains for those handsets are going to be in the cloud, in our environment. So that means no phone lines are needed. You just plug it in, it runs over your internet. Super easy. This is what probably most of you are familiar with. Voice works great on hosted VoIP. Fax works well now, eFax or traditional fax using an ATA. I know fax has been shaky on ATA for many years. It's gotten a lot more stable. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. But those applications for offices, retailers, restaurants, dentist offices, healthcare, hotels, etc. And you see this service typically priced between $15 to $25 per handset per month, based on volume. It allows you to get rid of all your phone lines and cut your costs significantly. So more in the cloud VoIP. Our footprint's everywhere. If you are interested, I'm going to just a little plug because Harry's given me the mic. If you want to talk about it, these are some of our customers. We've got customers all over the U.S., Canada, and Mexico weren't pictured on here, but there's blue dots all over there as well.
Yeah. Do you quote? And you're privately held, so I appreciate that you may not. But how many seats do you support?
We've got upwards of about 30,000 seats on our network. So
man, that's a real company.
It's a real company. We're not messing around, Harry. And growing very, very quickly, especially with this POTS issue. I mean, I think that we've just signed on 3 new customers for the POTS replacement solution that we're about to talk about for Lifeline services, and they're big. So distributed enterprise, this is just the market that we mostly work in, which just means lots and lots of locations. And because of that, we've got a lot of quick serve restaurants, small box retail, mid-sized box retail. Some of the logos you saw on the previous screen kind of fall into this, but we've built a ton of tools that are really about getting hosted VoIP out. And 9 out of our 10 products or projects are replacing POTS lines. And especially when you're dealing with a distributed enterprise that has lots of locations, you got lots of POTS lines, and so they're big numbers, and we're able to provide pretty big savings over copper infrastructure. Some of the things that we built specifically for large distributed enterprises, we have an overlay portal that allows our customers to go in and make changes. We call them global apps because you can make changes globally to lots of locations at once. And in the PBX world, those of you who are familiar with logging in or dialing into PBXs, which require a POTS line, by the way, to dial into for the old PBXs, or the newer ones have internet access. But you dial in, you make a change, maybe you change the store hours or their auto attendant IVR, or maybe you change their hold music and their greetings, and then you shut it down and dial into the next store. Well, imagine if you had 300 of those. It would be a lot of work to log into all 300 of those. So we've built a tool that lets you make one change and click apply to 300 sites, and then the thing spins, and then a couple minutes later, now you have new hold music, promotional music on every single location. I'm getting a chat here from Ernest, so I'm going to take a break here.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and cover that one. And then
Ernest is asking about soft phones and what we recommend for phones and PCs. Good question. From a soft phone perspective, and actually I didn't even touch on that. We're doing a ton of work with Teams, Microsoft Teams right now, which is a soft phone, and our system fully integrates with it. But first of all, I'll answer your question. There's a number of SIP soft phones out there that are all pretty good. Most providers like ourselves or service providers will have their own soft phone. So we have one called SimpleVoIP Mobile. We have a PC version, an iOS version, Android version, and then there are some open source or some freeware soft phones out there. I think Bria is one of the older companies that makes. They used to be called the X Lite.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. They've got a commercial offering as well, but you can buy them for $5 or $10 or whatever they are. So there's a number of good soft phones. For our soft phone, when customers buy service from us, we do include our soft phone in some of the service plans. What we are seeing, and now we're kind of going in a different direction here, but headquarters or offices, a lot of them aren't even buying phones anymore. In fact, they've sent their employees home. They're working from home, and they've been working on soft phones or Teams for a while, and they're kind of slowly coming back to the office or working in a hybrid setup. We're seeing customers just use Teams and turn on the voice integration that we have, so that we can do the call routing in the cloud. We can handle voicemail. We can handle the IVRs, and then we can route phone calls down to a mixture of desktop phones, soft phones, or Teams clients. And since Teams is already, Zoom will do the same thing, but Teams is already integrated with your calendar and your contacts. It makes it really easy to just click and dial. I mean, I make calls from my computer all day long, and I own a phone company. I don't even use a phone. So that's what's going on for offices. Some of the equipment in a cloud-based phone system you asked about. Here's what our mobile app looks like. There's a ton out there as well that are not tied to a particular provider. This guy right here, the ATA, this is a commonly used. This is a 2-port ATA. They'll make them in 2, 4, 8, up to 24 ports for larger installations. But this one allows you to keep existing analog phones. So if you've got a small environment, maybe it's a management office for a building, and they've got 2 phone lines, and maybe they've just got a couple 2-line phones sitting there sharing those lines with splitters. They can keep that. The POTS line goes away. You shut off that expensive POTS line and replace it with an ATA here, and it's got green phone jack 1 and phone jack 2. So it allows you to keep that same dial tone, and this just plugs into your network, and you get service from a service provider like us. These are IP phones on the left here. The A-Link is just an example. We support all of them, but there's Polycom IP phones, Cisco IP phones, Grandstream, audio codes. The A-Link's our favorite, and they got cordless phones as well as desktop phones. Okay, so I want to go into the third option, the POTS in a box option. That is, now there are different names for POTS in a box. People are calling it a lot of different things, but the gist of it here is we've got a device now that that looks a lot like that ATA that we had before, but it's beefed up. So why is it beefed up? It's beefed up to provide analog phone service, but analog phone service that now can reliably be used for more than just a phone call. So these are certified for Lifeline services. They can integrate with almost all legacy alarm systems, almost all legacy fire monitoring systems, fax machines, regular phones. If you're going to use it for a pool or for an elevator, you're going to feel good that it's going to be up because of a couple of things. So number one, the device has a built-in backup battery. So that's important for the certifications for Lifeline services. It comes with a 12-hour battery, upgradable to 24 hours. That should be enough to survive any most power outages. During hurricane season, we'll see a lot of these power outages, and a lot of times you're going to close the store or the office or whatever it is after a certain point if it's going to be an extended outage. But really important for those lines to stay up initially, especially if you need to dial 911 or if you have somebody stuck in an elevator because the power's out. So the backup battery of 12 to 24 hours, that's huge. And then we've got a built-in cellular backup. So this will run over, and that's what these paddles are. In fact, 2 of these paddles are for cellular, and the other 2 are for Wi-Fi, to be a Wi-Fi client in case you don't have a network cable to power it. So it will go out over the public primary internet, and then if that internet is down or not working, it'll go over its cellular backup. And in an area where you don't really have internet, you can go pure cellular. And let me show you the back of them here. So we got 2 models here. This is what's super popular right now. Data Remote is the manufacturer of the product that we're using. There's a couple out there. This box on the right is the CDS 9010. This supports 2 lines, and the one on the left supports 8 lines. So there's your 8 phone jacks right there. They're just RJ11 phone jacks. So this device is mounted in a telco closet, and we end up just taking the existing phone cables that are plugged in from your alarm system and your fire panel and your alarm. We go to that 66 block where they're punched down, and we move them over to this and put jacks on the end and move them right into here. We do a little bit of testing. And then they go green and we're online. And from a retrofit point of view, when we were talking about before rolling 3 or 4 trucks to a site to change out the safe, put in a card in the alarm system, to change out something in your fire panel, we don't have to do any of that. We just put this in and then plug everything right into it. So we can do up to 8 lines here. Questions about this service or product? I'll throw on pricing here. I think on average, providers are charging kind of between $35 to $40 per line. You got to buy the box, or you can lease it. And some providers are throwing it in for free if you sign a long enough contract. But what this allows us to do is take these phone lines that haven't been touched in 25 years and really just change out the brains. And so now the brains are right on your wall. You're not power dependent. You're not internet. You have multiple internet, multiple power. So it's going to be pretty stable and resilient. And now you're not relying on the copper infrastructure underground. And you don't have a phone bill from AT&T going to $500 a month. Any questions? Okay. So briefly, I want to go over this case study for the restaurant chain that I've sort of talked about here. We have a restaurant chain company of ours that has 300 restaurants. They already have 5 voice over IP endpoints. They've got SIP phones and cordless phones at every single restaurant. In addition, they have 5 phone lines, POTS lines, and they're paying a ton for them. 2 for the fire panel per code and regulation, 1 for the alarm system, 1 for the safe, and 1 for their curbside pickup / backup line. So they saw a dramatic increase this spring, the last couple months. They called us up and said, what can you do? We said, whoa, didn't realize you had so many POTS lines. We've got the perfect product for you. They looked at a retrofit. They decided that was going to be way too much work, way too much cost up front, and it was going to take coordination of multiple departments, and it was just going to be a huge pain. And IT wanted to solve this, and also IT wanted to shine and show the rest of the business how much money they could save the business. So we put the CDS 9090 into all the restaurants, and that's the bigger one that can do up to 8 phone lines. So some of the stores have 4 phone lines active, some have 3, some have 5. They're all a little bit different. And the install took about 3 hours on site to do 5 lines, tagging, cabling. We do a site survey up front. So with this a 1 hour site survey, so call it 4 hours on site total to convert everything. And now it's set it, forget it. This thing's on the wall. It's monitored from our cloud control panel. We can see that the lines are up. We can see that there's traffic on them, that they're checking in. We can see the battery level and the cellular signal strength as well. And no other equipment was replaced. They didn't have to retrofit anything, just move phone lines. So wanted to talk a little about the MSP Revenue Opportunity. I assume some of you on this bridge are MSPs, and kind of the obvious here is that there's recurring commission for partners or agents, various levels for various providers. But you all have customers that have POTS lines still, and they are all kind of going to scramble, if not already scrambling right now. So we have options we can present, and you as MSPs can make money presenting those options. In addition, there's installation opportunities. So this box needs to be installed. There needs to be a site survey. We're happy to do the tech work of the installation, or we're happy to hand over a pretty in-depth install guide and let your team grab that installation revenue.
There we go. So either or.
Either or, that's right. So last but not least, this is how to get in contact with us. You can send an email. You can call our phone number. Harry will probably distribute this. I don't know if you're going to distribute these slides.
Yeah, happy to.
Everybody, okay, that would be great. And then our website. Send my contact information around as well. That's our main number. But if you, you feel free to share. Anybody on this wants to call me directly, I'd be happy to take a call and talk about any of this. That's excellent. Everything I have. I realize we've got a little time to spare, so I want to open it up to questions.
I agree. We could just have an open forum. Again, I'm kind of leaning into Alan and Alan Miller and Joe Moore. If you guys just want to have an open forum, what are you seeing out there? Alan in particular plays in this reindeer game, and I'd be, if you're able, Alan, I'd be interested in some tales from the trenches.
You have to unmute him.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Hold on. Coming at you.
Uh-oh. I think I'm
there?
on.
Yeah, Alan, I think you're on. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you guys? Thanks for the presentation, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan sent a funny email to me about a month ago where he was the Response Point Partner of the Year at SMB Nation, the RPer of the Year. And Alan, I still want to post that up in our Facebook group, but
of a failed product. But that got me started, and I morphed my whole business from managed services to really just now I do telephony. And as you know, Harry, I'm a 3CX partner and do a lot of that.
Yeah, what are you hearing out there, Alan? What are you hearing in terms of POTS and that kind of thing, if anything?
I haven't run into as much of this as you guys have. We're in we have our own kind of a bell company left over from a long time ago here, an independent bell. I don't know if they're on the same point in the curve with everybody else. I expect it's coming down the road here before too long, but I haven't heard the kind of prices that you guys are talking about as far as these increases. And I have very few companies that are on POTS lines, mostly all VoIP.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's been spotty as far as price increases. We're not seeing it across the board at all, but we do have, we've heard some horror stories, and I can only expect it'll get worse and hope.
Yeah, I fully expect to see it eventually here.
Yeah.
This is Cincinnati, so I don't know if it was Mark Twain or somebody quoted as saying, welcome to Cincinnati, set your watch back 10 years.
All right. Well, thanks for your thoughts, Alan. I appreciate
it.
Joe Moore out of Detroit. Can I raise you up just to say hi?
Hey, Harry, how you doing?
Good. How's it going?
Not too bad. So we merged with a phone company a little over 2 years, about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we were seeing this and did a pretty good job, but of course the one client that we didn't do was us. So Josh, yes, our couple POTS lines that we had for a fax machine and an alarm system did go from, I think, $89 to $150 to $299. And that's when we finally said, okay, oops, bad on us. And we replaced that with a similar device. I don't do that side of the business much, Harry. So since we merged,
Yeah.
but yes, I know that we're getting that in the Detroit area quite a bit. The POTS lines are going crazy. So
Yeah. Joe, how many people came over in that merger? And for folks that don't know Joe, they were the Center for Computer Resources in the Detroit area. What was it, Joe? And back in the day, it's probably 70, 80 employees, and then you brought over the telecom people. Was that another 30, 40 people?
It was another 20, and then we piled on another 20, and then we expanded to about 155 people right now. So going crazy. Now it's good.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and Joe, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us. It's been too long.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Anyone else want to offer some comments or say hello? Just raise your hand, and myself or Josh will turn on your mic. All right, Josh. I think we may be there.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please reach out.
All right, and folks, I will be sure to kick out the thank you email along with the deck and Josh's contact information. Jenny, if you could get me the final list over, appreciate it. Well, with that said, Josh and everybody, have a great day.